Thank you so much, Battle, for another 500 Argentinian dollars. Or is it dollars? Do you call it dollars if it's not US dollar? Argentinian currency,
I don't
peso?
know.
Also, Malay kicking out her despite Marina. Am I reading that wrong? Malay kicking out her deputy,
Deputy.
Marina, because she votes in favor of ending the blockade on Cuba. That means that next time they do a vote at the UN, Argentina will join Israel and the US as the only countries that vote
Mm.
against India. Yeah, this is
Then
one of the things we wanted to talk about. Do you realize how absurd it is that literally the whole world, you know how hard it is to get the whole world to agree on something? The whole world, with the exception of the US and its proxies in the Middle East, which is Israel, the Zionist entity, which is basically just the US. Um, Everyone, with the exception of these two entities, has voted for 32 years in a row against the continuation of the US's blockade on Cuba. Like, can you fathom how much of humanity is sitting there saying, guys, stop this. It's not cool. And then the US policymakers, the American capitalist imperialist system is just like, no, we're going to keep going. In fact, we're not just going to keep going. We're going to call the thing we do internationally the rules based international order. We're going to call ourselves proponents of democracy. Yeah, what happens when everyone votes against us? Literally everyone. Yeah, I don't care. We're going to do what we want to do. So, I mean, the hypocrisy is there. And at this point, the Cuban people know that that blockade's not going to be lifted until we get our shit together here in the U.S. And this is what pisses me off always about the ultra leftists and these third worldists that are in the U.S. Like the third world is not there calling us settlers and saying wait until we invade your lands and actually overthrow imperialism in that manner. No, the third world is saying get your shit together and win so that you can lift this imperialist boot off of us. And every day that passes that we don't dedicate our energies to that, we're not just letting down our own people, but people from Cuba, people from all over the world, people from Palestine who are waiting for us to get our shit together and lift this fucking imperialist system and its claws off of humanity.
yeah, I mean, they couldn't even get the Marshall Islands on this one. Like the Marshall Islands, this might be the one piece of sovereignty that they still have. Like the Marshall Islands is just a tiny little country, U.S. colony. They're usually one of the only countries who votes with the U.S. on things like this because they have no sovereignty. It's like this is like the one piece of sovereignty they're hanging on to. Like we're not voting for the Cuba blockade. We're an island too. F you, the U.S. I hope that's what's going on. I don't know if that's why the Marshall Islands isn't voting with the U.S. on this, but it's crazy that, it really is insane that it's only the U.S. and Israel and,
Next
Argentina
to
being,
Argentina. Yeah.
you're right, Argentina being added to that list would be unsurprising for sure. I see a good question about Ukrainian paramilitaries. We'll get to that after, but let's quick watch this video of Stephen Miller since we're on the topic, smirking at a journalist who asked him about the UN vote against the U.S. blockade.
Yeah. Tomorrow, as you may know, is the annual vote in the UN General Assembly condemning the U.S. embargo on Cuba. You were aware of that?
I was not tracking this on my bingo card, so go right ahead.
I'm just wondering how the U.S. is going to vote this year.
I doubt we'll be voting to condemn ourselves. So
you abstain.
I love how he tried the meme joke. This wasn't on my bingo card. It happens every year. It should have been on your bingo card, dumbass. This isn't the time for your meme jokes. You're strangling people. You're starving people, and the world is condemning you because you're an evil empire run by a literal vampire-looking, soft little runt who's never worked a day in his life. That's the face of it. What a little rat. It's just like you said. It's like he's turning into a pampered, rich vampire.
1 year, the last year of Obama's presidency, you guys abstained on it, and it caused a bit of a ripple. But, as you probably know, it's basically the entire world votes to condemn it, and you and Israel, and in some cases, Palau or another Pacific island nation joins in voting against. This year, it's most likely just going to be U.S. and Israel. So, do you have anything to say about this yearly display of isolation on the international stage, at least in terms of this one policy?
I'm sure I will tomorrow if the vote takes place, but no, not today. So,
okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
He doesn't even have an answer. This guy has no shame. And this is why there's a crisis of legitimacy, right? Like, how can you watch that and think, oh, yeah, Stephen Miller handled that well? He laid out a lot of good reasons for this blockade. He couldn't think of one. He didn't even give the old, well, Cuba's filled with terrorists, so we have to starve their civilians so that to stop terrorism. He didn't even try that. He just made a joke about bingo and then walked off. Like, I was actually reading this book Carlos recommended to me today. I haven't been able to read as much as I normally like to lately because of all the work we've been doing, but I set aside some time to read The Cultural Cold War. And it's like you read about the founders of the CIA, and they were as evil as they were, and they were deeply evil. They were very dedicated and value-based, and they truly believed that they were defending the Western world from communist totalitarianism. And after the death of Stalin, I said this on X recently, it's almost like the U.S. had a more dedicated and bureaucracy when it came to defending their values, versus Khrushchev and the, some of the bureaucrats who were in charge of the Soviet Union after Stalin. It's almost like the U.S. was more the CIA officials were more dedicated to spreading capitalism than they were to spreading communism. Like, these people were fanatics, and they were intelligent, they were strategic, they were ruthless. They committed some of the most horrific massacres, or put in power people like Syngman Rhee in South Korea, who was literally mass murdering people and throwing them in caves, which are still covered in the yellow fat of those people to this day because of how many communists were murdered. And nowadays, though, I don't see that from the U.S. State Department. I feel like these are the children of those people who are running the system, and they're weaker, they're more stupid, they're arrogant, they're egotistical. They think any challenge to the system is possible. They think that their power is entrenched, and we see that with their policy towards Russia, China, and the rising multipolar world. They don't see the writing on the wall of, hey, maybe we should just start trading with these countries and stop trying to keep them under our boot so we can just rob them blind. No, it's we will, either we get to keep our position as the dominant global hegemon, or we'll have nuclear war if that's what it takes to maintain our top spot. But these people are so unimpressive, they're so stupid, they're not even good at lying or maintaining the lies that have been laid by their predecessors, the ruling class of previous eras. And also, a lot of the people in the CIA, I know we talk about this a lot, or our friend Jackson talks about this a lot of them were Trotskyites. So a lot of them had studied Marxism and then said, oh no, Stalin bad, I now am going to go join the CIA. But they understood Marx, right? They understood the system on a systematic level, and they used that to uphold it. That's why I call them evil Leninists. But nowadays, you think Victoria Nuland or Stephen Miller have read Marx? They don't do shit. They go to probably just spend all their free time at parties rubbing elbows with other rich people, and probably have never read a book in their lives. But
Well, I mean, this is an insight that goes back to Thucydides at the Pericles funeral oration, where he talks about the hubris of an empire in decline. These people still think they're good to go, but everyone is seeing the world that they held strangled free itself little by little, and they're gonna wake up one morning and realize, holy crap, I gotta smell the coffee. And what's interesting is that even there, what is Stephen Miller trying to do when he brings up the bingo card joke? He's trying to be relatable. But what's crazy is that it's gotten to a point where every attempt at them sounding relatable makes them sound even more unrelatable for regular people. There was a comment here.
On a world of tanks.
There was a comment here that, let's see, who made it? Chris made, about complaining about ultra leftists, but conservatives. To be honest, when it comes to Cuba, conservatives, regular working class conservatives, a lot of the MAGA base, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. The only people who care fanatically about blockades in general, but especially blockades on Cuba and Venezuela, are the quote unquote diasporas from those countries, specifically the ones that lived comfortably under the regimes that were puppet states of US imperialism. So even Trump was not planning on changing gears in terms of the policy that Obama had initiated, thanks to Pope Francis and stuff, towards Cuba. It wasn't his plan. It was the Republicans in Miami and in Florida and Ted Cruz in Texas who basically twisted his hand into having the blockade intensified once again, putting Cuba on the state sponsor of terrorism list, as etc. So the vast majority of Republicans themselves, MAGA or not, I don't think care about imposing a blockade on this small little island that really harms us in literally no way or threatens us in no way.
Yeah, I've made the argument before that like, this is shameful if you're an American patriot, that this is how we treat the islands of the Caribbean. Like, it's so disgusting and the opposite of, what our values are supposed to be. Obviously, it's perfectly in line with what the values of the U.S. empire have been, but it's not in line with the values of the American working class, like to bully a smaller island country who, so like embodies the ideals that America is supposed to embody so much better than we actually do, of the right to life and pursuit of happiness and all the rational kernels that are in the U.S. project.